Can you use the ADAM H200 headphones for mixing audio for video? Let's take a look. ADAM Audio sent these to me free of charge. They have not paid me further. They've not told me what to say. They have not reviewed this video prior to posting, and all of the opinions shared in this video are my own. In this video, Emma and I discuss our individual experiences with these headphones. And before we jump into that, I wanted to kind of cover some things because that discussion happened before I had a chance to look at everything and really test these headphones in every way. Specifically, there is a VST plugin that comes with these headphones. So the idea is that when you are mixing your audio for video, presumably, from our context at least, that you would plug this VST plugin into the master bus, and it would actually correct these headphones depending on what you're trying to do. Not correct, I would say, lets you select different modes for these headphones. So that VST plugin makes all the difference when it comes to mixing audio for video. And what I would say is if you just put the headphones on, plug them into any device, say you're listening to music, it has a little bit of a bassy sound. The bass is somewhat emphasized, and it sounds really, really nice for music. It's very enjoyable to listen to music on these headphones. But when it comes to mixing, you don't necessarily want that coloration. You want something that's more neutral. And these headphones can do that as well using the included VST plugin. And here's how, as I mentioned, you would plug that into the master bus when on your mix project, basically. That's how you do it. But what it does is it has a pure mode, and the pure mode reduces some of that bass, so it's a much more linear response, and it makes it so it's much easier to hear potential problems with your mix and be able to correct them while you're mixing. In fact, I would say that pure mode makes these headphones more useful for mixing than the Rode NTH100s, which are similarly priced headphones, and I reviewed those a couple of years back. So just for clarity, if anyone had questions about that, if you're choosing between the two, I would choose the ADAM Audio. There's also in the VST plugin a mode called Externalization, and essentially what that does is it makes it so that you can experience your mix closer to how it would sound if you were listening in a room with speakers. So it creates some crosstalk intentionally. In other words, the audio that's sent to your right ear, they're sending a little bit of that also to the left ear and vice versa. So audio to the left ear, a little bit of that's also being sent to the right ear. So you get that in-room experience. Can be helpful. Just as a test, you can kind of just toggle between the two modes, and that's super helpful. It also has a mode that keeps the volume or the loudness the same, even when you make the changes to those different modes. Super helpful for being able to A/B compare them and understand what's happening. So in this upcoming discussion, I mentioned that the clamping force with these headphones is not the most comfortable for me. But I must say that I'm a little bit of an outlier. I have a very tall head. And almost every set of headphones that I have ever used, and all of the ones that I own, most of them have to be set to the maximum extension to fit my head comfortably. So just keep that in mind. So when we talk, Emma's like, no, these are super comfortable, love them. And I was kind of like, not the most comfortable headphones in the world. It's very individual from person to person to person. So ideally, if you're considering buying these, if you can go somewhere where you can test them out, maybe a local Guitar Center or other kind of music gear store, you might be able to try them out and just see how they fit on your particular head. So overall for the price, I would say that the ADAM Audio H200s are probably at this price range, and these, the $180-ish, these are really, really good headphones for mixing audio for video. So with that, here's our discussion before I tried out the VST plugin. Okay, this is the ADAM Audio H200 closed back headphone review. What?
I'm pointing at them.
Oh. Today we're here to talk about the ADAM H200 headphones, which Emma is wearing here for us today. We're going to do this in a little bit of a different format today. Emma, you want to run us through no, don't run us through the specs. We'll put them on the screen. Basically, what are these?
They're monitoring headphones.
Okay.
From ADAM Audio, who makes, would you say renowned, in a way, monitoring systems.
Yeah. So typically have made speakers in the past. They're also making this set of headphones now. These are low impedance closed back headphones. So we'll talk more about low impedance means they're probably going to work with almost anything that you plug them into. So they'd work even with mobile devices. They'd work with field recorders, all the way up to really nice headphone amplifiers as well. So any of those will work great. Max sound pressure level 112.5 dB SPL. they can produce plenty of noise, not noise, sound levels. The sound levels can be through the roof. They're using the 40 millimeter peak performance transducers that were designed by ADAM Audio, of course. But let's talk about some of the kind of the more important things. First, let's talk about the pads, both on the top and the ear cups. Tell me about them. What's your impression?
Well, they feel like memory foam.
Okay.
We couldn't find information on what exactly they are, but they're very comfortable. So unlike some other closed back headphones that really clamp down on your head, these don't. And these pads are actually fully replaceable. So when they wear out and start to flake and get little leatherette pieces everywhere, you can probably send for replacement ones and put those right on there.
Okay, cool. So that's one thing. I found that with those and the closed back design, the isolating capabilities of these headphones, it's not active noise cancellation. Don't take this the wrong way, but just because they seal so well, because of the materials that they're made of, you get a lot of isolation, which is helpful in some circumstances.
For sure. I didn't hear you coming up the stairs earlier today.
Okay.
Usually I can for context in other headphones.
Yep. Okay, cool. Tell us about the cable real quick.
So that can be switched to either side. Right now I have it in my left ear, but there's another port just right here on this side, and you can plug it in there too. So depending on what the rest of your setup is like, you can customize that as you like.
Yep. 3 meters long, straight cable, not coiled.
Very
Is
useful.
what it comes like. So you can replace that as well, obviously. There is also a plug-in. We're not going to talk about that right now. I will come back to that. But I'm going to have to cut. Shoot.
Hold still. That'll make the cut easier.
The kit, of course, includes the headphones, a 3-meter cable with a detachable 3.5 millimeter jack adapter, so you can plug it into 3.5 millimeter outputs or 1/4 inch. And it does come with a carrying storage bag, priced at $180 US. So, 2-year warranty. Let's talk the subjective stuff now, because I think we have different perspectives here, and I'm excited to talk about that. So tell me, first of all, you're more of a musician, but you also do some post-production work.
I do.
What was your impression using these headphones for music? Just pure listening? You didn't do any music mixing with it, really? No. Okay, but then you also did some post-production work with them. Okay, tell me your experience. What do you think?
Great for both. I think they're definitely geared more towards the musician side of things, and ADAM makes that pretty clear, I felt, in their materials. Like, yeah, we're kind of a musician's company, which is cool. They're great for easy listening.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really impressed, actually, especially by the stereo image in these. Normally in headphones, it's kind of muddy, or you're just like, oh, just left and right, but you can get a pretty good front image and rear image as well.
Depending on the mix you're listening to. Okay.
Yeah, so that was impressive. And then we also used the ARC, is it the ARC Studio?
ARC on ear.
ARC on ear.
Headphone correction system.
Yeah, and that I felt like also had great performance through the headphones. This is not super related, but I felt like the correction curve made the response too flat, but it wasn't anything that the headphones couldn't handle.
Okay.
So I felt like the reproduction of the actual sound was still accurate and well-rounded. So it was very adaptive,
Okay.
I would say.
Okay. So for those not familiar with the ARC on ear, basically it's a device, it's a headphone amplifier that has DSP built into it, digital signal processing, that can, along with a bunch of correction curves for a bunch of different model headphones, including the H200s, to make them, in theory, flatter frequency response. I think in reality, headphones are tricky that way. There's a lot to the design of them and the way we all hear, and we all have different ears and ear canals, and they don't take into account head-related transforms. In other words, you can measure your ears and adapt the sound based on that, but the ARC doesn't do that. So all this to say, we tried to assess how accurate these headphones are, and I think there's a little bit of color to them, I would say.
Yeah, not in a bad way at all. Just something to be aware of.
Yeah.
If you are going to use them, is the goal of the ARC on ear to give you as neutral a response as possible in whatever device you're using? Like, is that the object of using it?
It's specifically supposed to neutralize the headphones. Let's just say that.
Okay.
The problem is that it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. There's a lot to do to really achieve that, and typically they're using a response curve because even human hearing is not flat.
Oh,
So
yeah, not at all.
It's it's just trying to help you. Let's just say that.
Gotcha. Well, if that's what you need, a super flat response or starting point,
Or a neutral response.
neutral, yeah,
Let's say.
then I mean that's a good thing to add to it, I suppose. I don't what my impression and takeaway was after doing some experimental listening, especially a lot with the correction curve and without across all kinds of music, modern rap, old acoustic recordings, Bob Dylan, all kinds of stuff. It did make a big difference with and without the correction curve in more modern stuff. You know, we like our bassy pop and all that kind of stuff. And I think you have to be just very clear with yourself about what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Whether you're trying to accomplish that sound or if you want something very raw and natural and of the studio that it was recorded in. And be aware that these, I think, sound best with maybe more modern produced music. Yeah, and that's not a bad thing.
Okay. What about for mixing? If you're doing post-production.
For spoken word? Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't find, for me, as a musician and post-production specialist, when I'm listening to people's voices, although I listen mostly to yours, but I don't find headphone or monitor coloration to be super disorienting when I'm doing that. Because over the course of editing, let's say a single YouTube video, I will become familiar enough with the person's voice and tone and timbre and rhythm of speaking that whatever coloration exists in my monitoring setup doesn't really bother me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to have that confidence so that when I am making mix decisions or cleanup decisions or EQ or whatever I'm doing, that I know that if I identify something that I think sounds bad, I need to know it's actually bad.
Yeah. And
so
that's the tricky part.
So that I can fix it. Here are a few things for me. So full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of closed back headphones. They have their utility. They are good when you're doing a situation like this. You don't want sound bleeding out necessarily, or if you need a lot of isolation from the environment in which you're sitting, they can be helpful. But I always feel a little claustrophobic, and they sound stuffy to me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think it also affects the timbre in some way too, and the stereo imaging. So I always prefer open back. So that's the first thing. So I have to fully disclose that before you take anything. I did feel like they were a little bit bass heavy when they are uncorrected.
Definitely.
And then when you turn on the ARC on-ear correction, they even out. But then I felt like the bass disappeared. So I had to push the volume a little bit harder to be able to. Then it started to come together. But those levels were a little bit uncomfortable to me. I prefer to monitor at a lower level if I can.
Yeah.
So.
And that was the other thing musically too, was that I felt like the correction curve gave a weird boost to the vocals in most of what I was listening to. And then it lost the context and resonance of the bass.
Okay, so it's almost like some of the modern mixes are made assuming that you're not listening to neutral headphones.
Definitely.
Okay.
And I think a lot of modern music listening hardware reflects that too.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah, including maybe these.
Yep, good.
I don't know.
As we mentioned before, good passive isolation. So I think that's here's the tricky bit with headphones. Everybody's head is different. Everybody's ears are different.
And this is a very unnatural setup. Like there's no airflow over your ears like there usually is when it's just your ears. And, they're firing directly into your head and all kinds of weirdness.
Yes, all kinds of weirdness. So what about clamping force? Like the friction that presses against the side of your heads. Did you find that comfortable on this set?
I did, yeah. And it doesn't come down too heavy on the top either. I've had trouble with that where it'll dig into the top of my skull and then I can't stay in them for very long.
Yep.
But for me, these are perfect. And they're pretty well adjustable right here, up and down.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
I actually found the clamping forces a bit too much for my head. So I could never mix in these for longer than about an hour.
Yeah.
which is, I don't typically stay on them for that long anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm using studio monitors plus headphones, and I go back and forth. But just a note, that's totally subjective thing. Just depends on your head as to what you're going to get there. It's also probably because my ears and brain have years of experience using biodynamic headphones. So I've used the DT880s, the 880 Pros, the 900 Pro X. Those are probably my bread and butter. 900 Pro X, excuse me, are my daily headphones. So take everything I say here with a grain of salt.
When you got the DT700 Pro X's
And I'm
here
using
too.
the 700 Pro X. But although I don't spend as much time in these closed backs, I use these on a live stream.
Yeah.
But I don't use them for mixing or monitoring.
I would say those I use the most for mixing and monitoring.
And these are the ones that Emma, till this point, has used the most.
Which is interesting. Somebody should run a study where they take like a bunch of groups of people with different headphone preferences, like brand or some category, and then study them over several years and see if they develop like an affinity for that headphone response or something.
I think there is something to that, absolutely. Like your brain, like if you get accustomed to a pair, it's like your brain and your ears adapt to it. And I think that's what's happened with me with biodynamic headphones, honestly, because I just have used them so much for so many years.
Yeah.
So, all right. I would definitely use these for recording or live situations, but I couldn't go for more than an hour at a time. But I think that's it for me. I think they're good headphones. They seem priced fairly for what you're getting.
Yeah,
What's your take?
definitely. And they have a good Black Friday sale. They were $149.99 US. Now they're back up to $180. Yeah, not bad.
Maybe, yeah, okay. All right, cool. Hope that was helpful. Get out there and make some great sound.